What's up, book nerds, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a book that I got for my birthday from one of my best friends, The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller.
I just saw Haley's comment, she waved.
The back says, Achilles, the best of all the Greeks, son of the cruel sea goddess Thetis and the legendary king Peleus, is strong, swift, and beautiful. Oh. Irresistible to all who meet him, Patroclus is an awkward young prince exiled from his homeland after an act of shocking violence. Brought together by chance, they forge an inseparable bond despite risking the god's wrath. They are trained by the centaur Chiron in the arts of war and medicine, but when word comes that Helen of Sparta has been kidnapped, all the heroes of Greece are called upon to lay siege to Troy in her name. Seduced by the promise of a glorious destiny, Achilles joins their cause, and torn between love and fear for his friend, Patroclus follows. Friend. Little do they know that the cruel fates will test them both as never before and demand a terrible sacrifice. Now, if you don't want any spoilers, please click off because I'm going to go into depth of the story and give a bunch of them. So, the beginning of the story, Patroclus is a prince, and his father doesn't really love him or treat him well and is always like, you should be better. You should be a better son, you should be a better prince, you should be a better person. Achilles, as a young boy, comes to this tournament match sort of ordeal at Patroclus's dad's, the king's palace, and wins. And Patroclus is just staring at him and notices his beauty and then also how great he is at everything. His father, Patroclus's, was basically this is what a true prince should be like, this is what a man should be like, you need to be like Achilles. But Patroclus was nothing like Achilles. He was not this great war hero or destined for that. He was just a boy. He was playing with marbles, and another boy, a farm boy, not a prince, came and tried to take the marbles, and Patroclus said no and ended up shoving him, and he tripped and hit his head on rocks and died. And then his father basically was like, you killed someone, everyone's calling for you to be killed, but since I'm this great king who is forgiving and you're my son, I'm gonna exile you. So he exiled him to Achilles' father's, Peleus. Backstory on Achilles: he is the son of Peleus and Thetis. Thetis is a Greek goddess of the ocean, sort of. Peleus actually raped her, and that's how Achilles came to be. Then Thetis was told by the gods what Achilles' life would be like, and she was told that he was going to be some great war hero. And so Achilles grew up in his kingdom and never was around the other boys, but all the boys looked up to him and loved him, but he always trained and did his own thing until Patroclus came along, and they kind of got together and became inseparable. Then one day, Patroclus realizes that he may have more feelings for Achilles than he originally thought and kisses him, and Achilles runs away. Backstory: Thetis hates Patroclus just because she thinks love is kind of a weakness. Achilles then, the next morning, is taken by his mother to Chiron, who is a centaur, in the mountains to learn about fighting, medicine, living basically on the land. Patroclus at first thinks Achilles just left him, but then he realizes what happens and runs to the mountain, and Achilles was waiting for him, and then they both went and got trained by Chiron, even though Thetis didn't want that. So they spent a few years there actually, and they're just bond both in a friendly platonic relationship and then later on a romantic one blossomed, and they fell in love, and it's very cute and wholesome. The mountain days come to an end. I think it's around Achilles' 16th birthday. His father sent someone to tell him that a war was going to break out between the Trojans and Greeks. Thetis has another thing to say about it. She actually ends up taking Achilles to an island and disguising him as a woman. Patroclus is all bent out of shape. After a little while, he goes and grovels to the king and is like, where is your son? Where is Achilles? And the king eventually tells him what happened, that Thetis took him to this island. So Patroclus goes to the island and immediately recognizes Achilles because he's dancing as a woman, but he sees like his eyes and knows it's him. And then they are reunited and spend a bunch of time on this island together. But lo and behold, Achilles actually slept with a woman and like wedded her, sort of, and then got her pregnant. So this was like a plot twist. He did it because Thetis, his mother, kind of forced him to, and Patroclus eventually, well, he kind of forgave him right away, which I didn't really necessarily agree with. I'm like, there should be a little groveling on Achilles' part. Like, he slept with a woman and someone other than Patroclus. Like, what the heck? Patroclus forgives him right away, but Achilles is now technically married and going to have a son, he finds out. Odysseus and Diomedes, could be totally saying this wrong, they came to this island and also discovered Achilles because they had been looking for him far and wide. Achilles learns why his mother hid him from war, even though he's supposed to be some great war hero. She hid him because she heard of another prophecy that this war would be the death of him, like he would die. Odysseus and Diomedes come find him and he ends up going to war. And Patroclus, of course, comes with him. They got to the beach, won the beach, the Trojan beach in Troy, and then they set up camp together. Achilles starts to fight, becomes the war hero. Patroclus doesn't ever really go on the battlefield. He starts to go and be a doctor, actually, and help out in the medicine tent because he's not really a killer. Ever since he was exiled, he felt terrible, and whenever he goes to war, like on the battlefield at Troy, Achilles is always just around him and killing everyone and protecting him, so he never actually has to lift his sword. But that's kind of what happens, and eventually he becomes more of a medic than a soldier. They start taking spoils of war. They are basically burning down little farm villages outside of Troy's walls to anger them and bring them out when they first get there. And so they take spoils of war, as in like women, along with other things like the cattle, the sheep. Patroclus like begs Achilles to get all the women he can so that they're not raped and that they can just live. Patroclus actually becomes great friends with all the women, and one of the women actually falls in love with Patroclus, but Patroclus is all about Achilles. Also, backstory, the woman that Achilles got pregnant and is like married to, before they left the island, Patroclus slept with her too because he felt bad. I'm like, what the hell is going on? You guys love each other. You can't be cheating on each other with the same woman. I think he just kind of wanted to do it as payback, and then he also just felt bad, but I'm like, you don't sleep with someone because you feel bad. And then the Trojans, after a little while, do come out and they fight on the battlefield. All is going well. Achilles is killing a bunch of people. He's becoming this war hero. The prophecy about him dying, he found out from his mother, Thetis, that it would be sometime after Hector, the prince, the oldest prince of Troy, dies. And it's like the ongoing joke that, well, okay, that's fine. Hector has never done anything to me. Why would I kill him? Dun dun dun. Foreshadowing at its finest, ladies and gentlemen. Agamemnon is a very prideful king. Achilles is very prideful. And they start to butt heads. Achilles one day like stands up and says like, Agamemnon, this is what you did wrong. You need to make it right. He actually stole this woman and took a woman as a war trophy, and she was like a priestess. Agamemnon, in doing that, offended the gods, and so a plague hit. Achilles spoke in front of a crowd and said that was the reason, like, Agamemnon, you need to give this priestess back. And Agamemnon is like not happy. Eventually he goes too far and takes this woman that Patroclus is now friends with, and Achilles, it was his first war, spoil of war. Agamemnon takes her back, which is like completely wronging Achilles, I guess, because it's like his. She's his. Agamemnon like takes her, originally is gonna like rape her and completely, you know, offend Achilles more, but then that would raise the right for Achilles to basically kill Agamemnon. And so Patroclus goes to the king and tells him of Achilles' plan, because Achilles is not really caring about this woman. He just cares about himself and his pride. Achilles swears off that he's not going into battle anymore until he's given back this spoil of war, this woman, and the king apologizes and says how he needs Achilles. Patroclus and Achilles' relationship, like, it's always strong and it's very cute and wholesome this whole time, so recommend reading the book just because that. But their relationship also gets a little strained because Patroclus is like, you need to go back into battle, like, the Greeks are dying, the Greeks are our people, and Achilles is like, no, my land, like, those, I forget what they're called, but those are my people, you're my person, I could care less about all the Greeks, and the king wronged me, and until he admits that he needs me and I'm better than him, I'm not going back. Patroclus ends up with Achilles' blessing, dressing in his armor and leading the Meridians, I think they're called, which is like Achilles' group and his people, out into battle because the Trojans have reached the Greeks' like campsite, and it's been like 10 years at this point. Like, the war has been long. Patroclus dresses as Achilles, goes to battle with the Meridians, and is like saving the day. Everyone gets around Achilles and is excited, and it's basically just his name that starts making everyone fight back harder, and the Greeks push the Trojans out. But Patroclus is kind of on a war high, and he starts actually killing people, and he gets really caught up into it, and he goes all the way to Troy's walls, and Hector's there and ends up killing him. So the foreshadowing comes to light because Hector has now done something to Achilles. The ultimate horrible, worst thing he could possibly do, kill Achilles' lover, you know? And Patroclus, when he's getting killed, he's like, shit. Like, this is the one thing that would get Achilles to kill you because you've now done something to him. And he's almost like begging him not to kill him just for that reason. Like, hey, Hector, you know, if you kill me, Achilles is gonna kill you, and then Achilles is gonna die. Achilles then fights, could care less about his pride and his issue with the king, kills Hector, and then drags Hector's body around. The king of Troy comes in the night to get Hector's body back, and Achilles finally says, okay. Achilles just continues to fight, doesn't really care about his life, actually fights without armor because now Patroclus is gone. He could really care less, and he's like, let's get this prophecy on with. I want to die. But nobody's like good enough to kill him, and he's not gonna let someone just like kill him. The prince who stole Helen, he's the one who ends up killing Achilles with a bow and arrow. This whole time it's still through the like point of view of Patroclus because Patroclus is like there. He hasn't been put to rest yet because Achilles is also like doesn't want to burn his body and stuff. He eventually does burn his body right before he dies and tells like the crowd, when I die, I want to be buried, like our ashes mixed. So Achilles dies, but then Achilles' son shows up, who's like a complete asshole, terrible person, has a big burial for Achilles, but doesn't want Patroclus's ashes mixed with him because he's like homophobic. The war eventually ends. There was another prophecy that said Achilles' son, once he got there and like started fighting, he would finish the war. Patroclus is just there in the wind as basically a ghost because he was never put to rest. Like, his final wish and Achilles' final wish to be laid to rest together and then go to the underworld together was never fulfilled. Achilles is gone because he was laid to rest, but Patroclus is just kind of floating there, and one day Thetis comes to visit her son, which she hasn't really been there because she's been with her grandson, Achilles' son. This grandson actually took Agamemnon's like daughter or something and raped her, just something like terrible with a woman, and offended the king, and so he died. He was killed. And so that's why Thetis now has more time on her hands, and she comes to visit her son Achilles. And finally, after hearing all of Patroclus's stories about Achilles and how he was so much more than just a war hero, he knew he was actually a good person. So after Thetis heard all of the stuff about her son and how great he actually was, she fulfilled his final wish and laid Patroclus's ashes with him. They mixed, and they both lived happily ever after in the underworld. That's a Song of Achilles in a nutshell. It was phenomenal. I read it in one day last weekend because I was sick, and there's really nothing better that makes me feel better because I was sick and I was also feeling kind of down mentally, and there's nothing that makes me feel better than reading a book because your head, your mind, is in a completely different reality from your own, and you throw in some romance and love in there and you got me. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.